about ankles, feet, toes, and all that fun stuff that nobody really likes to talk about. I mean, just because feet are gross to begin with. Toes look like 4 little ETs and angry ET. They get funny things on them, they smell, all that stuff. But I'm going to blame this whole thing on Ken Clark.
That picture on the left is just awful.
I like that one, that's why I put it up there. So Ken and I were talking on the phone, and Ken kind of threw this one out there because he knew I'd jump on it, but we were talking about what we were looking into and stuff like that, and he goes, you know, I came across some really cool robotic stuff. I said, yeah, really? What kind of stuff? He goes, you know, well, you got the smartest people working on this gate and trying to figure out how to make a robot run. So I think there is a gold mine of information in there. And as soon as I heard gold mine, I said, hey, can you send me that stuff? And sure enough, he sent it. And I'm thinking, I'm looking for gold mine. So it's a big PDF, about 270 pages. And so I'm into it. And so I'm reading. It's fascinating stuff. I mean, it's well written, but I think it was written in 1987. So it's not really current, but if you look at the history of robots, it hasn't really changed much until a couple weeks ago. So here's what I found. At MIT by 1987, the fastest they can make a robot go was 5.9 meters per second. And it was kind of this crazy machine where there is this arm that came out because they didn't know how to direct where it was walking to. And so it was kind of like this piston thing that went up and down, and it kind of moved it around. And so if you think about, Ken and I were talking last night, he goes, you know, Peter was the one who was really into this. Or no, it was the other guy, the silent partner.
Yeah, Larry Ryan, the physicist.
Larry Ryan, the physicist, was the one who was really into it because that's where they're looking for that vertical force and where that kind of dovetailed to, which was really interesting last night. But that's the best they can do. Then they made something a little more free moving and came up with Mabel. Mabel's going 6.8 miles per hour. It's the best she can do. And she kind of clonks along. And then this spring, anyone see this? Boston Dynamics, who seems to be the leaders in this research, right, Ken? Some really smart people from MIT and other surrounding engineering schools doing math problems I can never even imagine, came up with this. I don't know what they named it, but it still only runs about 7 miles an hour. But it can accommodate for, there's a log here in the picture, and it stops, it recognizes the log, and it jumps up and goes over. Kind of cool, huh? A little scary if you're into the end of the world scenarios with robots. How many people have Battlestar Galactica? I was a huge Battlestar Galactica fan in the 70s and the recent one. And we all know if you fight in Battlestar Galactica, the Cylons can't move very fast. So you can always outrun the Cylon. That's why the good ones are when they're in the forest, and the Cylons are kind of fumbling around over the forest things. You can outrun them and kill them. Here's a scary thing, though, guys. Anyone recognize that? Black Mirror. That's Metalhead. This is the robot that they created. Boston Dynamics call it Cheetah, 30 miles an hour. So if you watch Black Mirror, just 2 of us watch Black Mirror on Netflix. Who does not watch Black Mirror on Netflix? So it's horrifying because it's how technology goes one click too far. Like a bad day with likes and dislikes and things like that. But in this episode, the robots have taken over, and this is their predator that's out hunting people. And it's about this lady, one of the last ladies who's out. Did you see it?
I see it. I'm kind of watching.
And she is trying to fight this thing. Now she blows off its arm here, as you can see. But I'll leave the rest of you to see. So great story about robots. Here's a complete tangent. Here's the gold I found. After reading 270 pages, having to ask Mike Kennedy physics questions about different formulas and things like that, and looking stuff up on my own. If the power is limitation, and so they're looking at running here. If the power is limitation, then at max velocity, the drag force cancels the thrust force, leaving no thrust to accelerate the system. So if you're looking at the recent research about deceleration and foot strike and things like that, you've completely accommodated for that braking mechanism in the foot that does not allow you to run as fast. If the limitation is strength, then at maximum speed, the loading on some components equals its strength, and any increase in speed would cause it to break. Which again, how fast can humans really run to the point where they're going to break? And so if you're looking at injuries at top-end sprinters, it kind of accounts for that. If the limitation is stability, then at max speed, some equilibrating mechanisms is at the stability limit, and at higher speeds, the system would tumble out of control. So you're overloading the stumble reflex, which is kind of why I really like the overspeed training so much, is because you're pushing that system, which is something I'll talk about in December. But that was my goal after 270 pages. Thanks, Ken. You took weeks out of my life as I went through that, and I'm going through that.
I'm sorry about that.
But as I got to the end, he came up with some conclusions as to why robots can't run faster. They cannot account for how well and how incredibly dynamic the foot is and all the mechanisms in the foot. So here's the best that they could do with some kind of foot to go through. And what he concludes is that the Achilles tendon is this incredible thing. There is not any man-made substance or things that they've found that can replicate what the Achilles tendon can do. They have found things that can absorb that much energy where it doesn't break, but it can't put it back out. And at the same time, they've also found things that absorb that much or can take a bunch but can't put it back out. There's nothing fast enough that transfers the energy faster. So that's what started me down this slippery slope of all this foot stuff. So really, I'm thanking Ken because it really made me see things in a different way. And then if you look even further at the foot, you have all these different things that the foot does that a robot foot can't do. Invert, evert, pronate, supinate, varus foot, valgus foot, all that other stuff, and all the myriad of muscles that are through there that are helping us guide us to move in a fast fashion. So that got my brain going. So then I started going into research. And again, I ask people, I just randomly email researchers and hope that they send me stuff. I thought he was my friend, that Rio Nagahara. He used to send me stuff, but I think I asked too much because the last time he didn't send anything back, so I think I did something to him. But there's some great stuff out there. The Bezdis brothers, they're in Cardiff. I think that's in England. Understanding the effects of touchdown distance and ankle joint kinematics on sprint acceleration performance through computer simulations a couple years ago. Beneficial effects of reducing ankle joint dorsiflexion during early stance and acceleration performance, and identified the need for coaches to increase ankle plantar flexion strength. And Ken and I were talking about this, about maybe coming out of the blocks is something completely different from the 40-yard dash, which is why we were chatting about that. But they go on to talk about the foot. The stiffer the ankle complex is at contact, the more energy can be transferred up and down the line. For example, big toe, poor function of the big toe dissipates 34%, up to 34% of the energy that you're supposed to transfer up and down the line. So remember, if we're looking at sprinting as some kind of mechanism of absorbing and putting back out energy through the foot complex, and you're dissipating a third of that because you got poor big toe function, that's an issue. The ankle and foot absorbs about 75% of the energy in a sprint. Tendon elastic energy in the human ankle plantar flexions and its role in increasing running speed. Adrian Lai. This is a good paper. The MTU. Anyone know what the MTU is? The muscle tendon unit. You know that on good calves, you have kind of like that heart shape here. Yeah? Yeah, so good. You're still awake. Thank you. That's it. That's triceps surae, and a bunch of things kind of jam into that spot there. And what they found was the MTU of the gastroc and soleus is responsible for 75% of the work at 8 meters per second. And what their research showed was the faster you go, the more it became about the muscle tendon unit. And they didn't have the stuff that they have with Peter Wayand and some of the equipment that they have in Japan, but he went on to think that the faster you go, it becomes even more. Muscle length doesn't change much in the ankle and foot when you're running at speed. It all stays basically about the same. And here's their long conclusion. That the whole thing becomes isometric in its behavior. The storage and recovery of tendons and elastic strength during the ankle plantar flexors, enhanced muscle performance is likely an integral in achieving maximum sprinting speeds. So when Tony talked about Marcellus, how stiff he runs, and there are a bunch of us there watching it, when he hits the ground, nothing happens. I mean, that's like one piece and it doesn't move. I'll show you film a little bit. Another one, ankle dorsiflexion torque was the greatest contributor to generation of the whole body propulsion. Michael Yesis talks about how much it does, how much work it does, and it goes on and on and on. And then you get into the MTP, which is the metatarsal phalangeal joint. That's the ball of your foot, the ball of your big toe. And it showed the largest contribution of all the joints, because this is kind of a novel piece of research. In all previous research, they put stuff on ankle, knee, and hip. Nobody ever thought about putting it on the big toe. But when they did, it changed how everyone saw things. So from what was previous found out, or what the numbers they put it on, when you threw in the joint of the big toe, the ankle contributed to 35%. They redid the math, and the ankle contributed for 35% more. The knee was 40% lower, so the knee became almost something kind of negligible. I'm not saying you can run without a knee, or the muscles still do stuff, but it was a lot less important, and the hip was only 9% higher. So basically, after I showed you all that research, basically what all the research shows now is that the ankle-foot joint is probably the most important thing for training sprinting and running speed. That's how you can account for someone that weighs 140 pounds and they don't look that big. They've got a butt, but it's not that huge, but they can still run. Or you have the Bo Jackson guy who's huge and he can still run. Makes sense, right? So why is this not more popular? How come we're not spending it? If it's 75%, if it's responsible for 75% of your running speed, and we look at this like a football coach, are we spending 75% of our time trying to develop that ankle-foot complex? Think about the weight room. Squat. Do a JL sport squat. Don't go parallel.
And a bench press.
And a bench press. Nothing. And plus, if you think from a sales job, what does every high school guy want to be? That? Or high and tight? They don't sell the muscle magazines with these guys walking around. It's this. Coach, I got to do more calf raises. I saw this guy. He ran fast. He had big calves. I need big fat calves. But what about these guys? High and tight? No? Right? You can't wear that shirt. You get beat up. Next thing you know, they're going to make some kind of bumper sticker like this. My isoplantar flexion kid can outrun your 300-pound bench press club. Mom. So, looking at that, I started looking at my own kids. This is Matt from this morning. If you were with me, he was 5th in the state in the 100-meter dash. He runs 10.8. Pretty good for a kid going to University of Chicago. Now this is my new thing this year, because I get really frustrated when I'm doing presentations. In the video, I can't slow down. So I filmed it in slow motion on my computer, and then I pulled it in. So see if that works any better. So this one I think I mistimed a little bit. But what we're going to look at here is when he comes out, there's me fumbling around. And I'm looking at what his ankles do here. He hits and he stays pretty square here, but watch what happens on this one. He hits, collapses, and that foot, oh, it jumped. And now his shin is pointing straight up and down. And so if you're looking at diminished rate of force, the DRF stuff that J.B. Morin talks about, the way I see it is this shin bone becomes a vector of where you're pushing from, especially early on in the acceleration phase. And so when you go to push, your mass is actually coming out this way, and you slowly come up and your shins become more perpendicular. But what happens with Matt was on his second step, when he's pushing up this way instead of that way. If I'm accelerating on my second step, I want as much body mass moving this way as possible, right? So I'm going, well, that's kind of strange. So let me look at another kid. This is Nick Fidanzo. He was an 11 flat kid. He's got a whole bunch of scholarship offers to Big Ten schools. He's a running back. Think about this. Here's a great situation. I mean, he's got an Adonis body. I mean, you see him, you're like, yeah, he's it. He spent all season trying to lose weight so he can run faster. Isn't that awesome? He gets it. He gets that the less body weight that he has to push, the faster he's going to run. Unfortunately for us, our sectionals, it was 48 degrees. And it's hard to run under 11 at 48 degrees. So here he comes coming out. Great first step. And then watch the shin go up. He's going to hit, collapse, and he's almost vertical again. So again, if you go to the Homewood Flossmoor meet where we're running against those guys, he gets beat by the second step because he's pushing to go this way and they're all pushing to go that way. This guy's, he played with the 49ers, but now I don't know what he does now. But he couldn't run a good 40 time, and he's got great techniques. So you can have the great shapes that people talk about, like Altus talks about hitting shapes. Look at their great shapes. So when he comes out, great shapes, right? But when he pushes, foot collapses, watch the heel come to the ground, and he's pushing straight up in the air again. So where's he pushing? Where's his DRF? Because I think J.B. Morin talks about that, about how important that is, and that's really a key factor in how fast you can run. So here's a good one. I'm going to show you some good ones here. This is his friend. He's somewhere else. He was a really good athlete, just had a really bad attitude. So watch when he comes out, and he ran 4.4s for teams. So watch his shins. By the way, that's my yard, or that's my neighbor's, that's my street that I run on. So see how that shin is more horizontally aligned when he pushes out? And watch the second step. There's that 90-degree angle that Bezdis talks about. And his push, he's covering a lot more ground, moving horizontally rather than my kids who are pushing straight up in the air and not going anywhere. Here's another one. This is the female Marcellus. Her name is Samira Killebrew. She's from Indianapolis. She comes up once a month and trains with me because it's a long drive. She ran 11.5 at the state track meet in Indiana. 11.5. Now, she didn't run a great 200 because she was in the hospital on Wednesday with gallstone problems. And she decided that she wanted to run. Yeah, you know the story?
Yeah, I'm from Indiana, and it was a newspaper. She's phenomenal.
She's phenomenal. But she didn't run she actually runs better 200s, but her gallstone problem flared up after they won the 4x1, and she got third, didn't she?
I believe so.
Yeah, she got third in the 200 because she had stones and stuff. I haven't had that, so I really don't.
She won the 100.
She won the 100. Nobody was even close.
The girl who got second actually false started. They didn't call it. So the girl, she actually beat a girl, got a head start, a step on her. And all of us threw our hands in the air like they're not going to call that back. So
And she ran her down like she was nothing.
ran her down.
Yeah. So watch her come out of the hole here. When she pushes, watch her shins and watch her ankles lock. She's got the shapes, but there's no collapse in that ankle when she pushes. And look at that shin. It's more horizontally aligned when she comes out. Wouldn't that be horrible that she shows up and beats your entire boys team? And she's tiny. She's really nice. She's got like a 34 ACT. I mean, she's going to go anywhere she wants.
How old is she?
She's 16. She was a sophomore this year.
Yeah, but the sophomore thing, I don't know.
Yeah, it must be the year. What year? Well, that's my daughter's age. That's 2001. Must be a magic year. And so here's Marcellus. This is what Ken and I did last summer. I promised Ken I wouldn't do too much on this. But when he comes through, and when you hear him go, it's a solid, it's a drum beat when he comes through. Very little movement in there, and I think some movement's important, which we're going to talk about in a minute, which I need to speed up here. But you get the idea, right? So I'm going to took some of my kids through the program I'm going to teach you here, and here's the change that we saw. This is the worst case scenario, just because worst case is always fun. I put them on a run rocket so it would make the problem look worse. Watch his left foot.
Whoa.
Right foot's good. Left foot hits vertical shin. And this can happen to anyone. Some of you may say, well, I coach in college and things like that. JL sends me film of guys that he's got a guy playing at Purdue, and I'm watching him accelerate. I said, JL, you got to deal with this. This kid's running 4.6 because that shin's vertical when he pushes out. He's completely collapsing through that ankle. And so we went through this isometric progression I'm going to teach you here, and here was the after. This is at Hinsdale Central. They fired me this year. Much better, right? So how are we going to get there?